Jiho pushed through the sliding doors of Kix's repairs with a grimace on his face. The small shop sat on the outer ring of Proxima Centauri Station, far from the polished central hub where most humans lived and worked. Here, the corridors were narrower, the lighting dimmer, and the air carried hints of machine oil and alien spices. Behind him, Jiho's malfunctioning droid, Setham, rolled forward on wobbly treads. The soil analysis module had been his faithful companion for 3 years of terraforming work, but now its main sensor array hung at an odd angle, and its movements were jerky and unpredictable. "Come on," Jiho urged the machine when it stopped abruptly in the doorway. He tugged at its frame, wincing as pain shot through his lower back. Just a few more steps. The repair shop was cluttered but organized. Tools of varying shapes, some recognizable to human eyes, others clearly designed for appendages with different configurations, hung on magnetic strips along the walls. Half-finished projects sat on workbenches under bright spotlighting. The air smelled of hot metal and electric current. Jiho hadn't slept properly in days. His normally neat black hair stuck out in all directions, and his terraforming corps uniform, once snug against his athletic frame, now hung loose around his waist. Dark circles beneath his eyes made his face look hollow. "Hello," he called out. "I need a repair." His voice came out as a croak. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Is anyone here?" A rustling sound came from behind a tall shelf stacked with parts. A moment later, a creature emerged that made Jiho take an involuntary step back. The Iridian stood about a head taller than Jiho. Her exoskeleton was primarily a dusty copper color, with iridescent blue patterns across the thorax. 6 limbs extended from her body, 2 strong legs, 2 primary arms, and 2 smaller, more dexterous appendages that sprouted just below what humans would call shoulders. Her head was smooth and oval, dominated by compound eyes that shifted from green to purple depending on the angle of light. 2 long antennae extended from the top of her head, constantly moving in small, precise patterns. "Welcome to Kix's repairs," the Iridian said, her voice surprisingly melodious through the universal translator chip embedded in Jiho's ear. "I am Kixa." Jiho had worked with many alien species during his 5 years as a terraforming engineer, but he had limited interaction with Iridians. They were known for their mechanical genius and their somewhat unsettling ability to perceive biological systems as just another type of machinery. "My droid needs fixing," Jiho said, gesturing toward Sesam. "It's a soil analysis module. Standard TerraCorp's issue, but with some custom modifications." Kix's antennae twitched toward the droid, then swiveled to point at Jiho. "I see." She moved across the workshop floor with surprising grace for a being with an exoskeleton. 2 of her limbs carried scanning devices that Jiho didn't recognize. "This unit has a designation?" she asked, already beginning to examine Setham. "Yes, it's SAM," Jiho replied. "It's been malfunctioning for 3 days now. The sensor array is misaligned, and there's something wrong with its mobility functions." Kixa ran one scanner over the droid, then, to Jiho's surprise, pointed the other directly at him. A soft blue light washed over his body. "Hey." Jiho raised his hand to block the scan. "I didn't ask for that. Comprehensive analysis is standard procedure," Kixa said, her compound eyes shifting to a deeper purple. "All connected systems must be evaluated." "I'm not connected to," Jiho began, but a sudden wave of dizziness cut him off. He reached out to steady himself against a workbench. Kixa made a clicking sound that the translator didn't convert. "How long since you last entered rest cycle?" Jiho frowned. "That's not relevant to fixing my droid." "When did you last consume adequate nutrients?" Kixa continued, ignoring his objection. "Look," Jiho said, his patience wearing thin. His head pounded with the beginnings of another stress headache. "I've got extremely tight deadlines on a terraforming project. I need SAM back in working order as soon as possible. That's all." Kixia set down her scanning devices and approached Jaiho. Her movements were deliberate, almost cautious, as if approaching an unstable power source. "Your SAM unit has minor damage," she said. "Primary issues are misaligned optical sensors and worn treads causing mobility errors. Repair time, approximately 2 hours." Jaiho let out a relieved breath. "Good. That's good. I can wait here if that's okay." He glanced around for somewhere to sit. "However," Kixia continued, her antennae pointing directly at him, "my scans indicate that you, the operator, are functioning at dangerous efficiency levels." Jaiho blinked. "Excuse me? Your biological systems show signs of severe fatigue. Nutrient levels are below acceptable parameters. Stress hormones are elevated beyond safe thresholds." Kixia's voice remained matter-of-fact. "Your operational capacity is severely compromised." A flash of irritation shot through Jaiho. "I didn't come here for a health check. I just need my droid fixed so I can get back to work." "Just fix SAM, please," Jaiho muttered, rubbing his temples. "I've got terraforming deadlines." Kixia's compound eyes narrowed, the purple darkening to an almost indigo shade. Her antennae stilled, a sign, though Jaiho didn't know it, of iridian concern. "Interesting," she said, her head tilting slightly. "You recognize the importance of maintenance for your mechanical assistant, but not for yourself." Jaiho opened his mouth to object, but another wave of dizziness hit him. This time, he had to grip the workbench tightly to stay upright. The room seemed to tilt and spin around him. "When did you last sleep?" Kixia asked again. "I don't know," Jaiho admitted reluctantly. "Maybe 40 hours ago. I took a stim tab yesterday." "And food?" Jaiho tried to remember. "I had a nutrition bar this morning, I think." Kixia moved to a console on the wall and tapped a series of commands. A holographic display appeared, showing what Jaiho recognized as human biological readings alongside mechanical diagnostics for SAM. "Your machine requires minor repairs," Kixia stated, pointing to the droid's schematics. Then her smaller limb indicated the human readings. "You, however, appear to be functioning at dangerous efficiency levels." "I'm fine," Jaiho insisted, though the room wouldn't stop spinning. "The data suggests otherwise," Kixia replied. "In Iridian culture, it is considered deeply unethical to repair one component of a system while ignoring catastrophic failure in another." Jaiho felt his knees buckle. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Kixia moving with surprising speed to catch his falling body with 4 of her 6 limbs. "Humans." Kixia clicked to herself as she carefully lowered the unconscious terraformer onto a cushioned repair bench. Such remarkable machines, and such terrible maintenance protocols. She turned to the patiently waiting droid. "Do not worry. SAM, I will repair both of you." Jaiho woke up on a padded bench with a start. The unfamiliar ceiling above him was covered in twisting metal pipes and blinking lights. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then he heard the distinct sound of metal tools against metal parts, and it all came back to him. He was in an alien repair shop on the edge of Proxima Centauri Station, and he had passed out. "How long was I unconscious?" he asked, sitting up too quickly. A wave of dizziness forced him back down. 17 minutes and 43 seconds, came Kixia's melodious voice from across the workshop. "A brief emergency shutdown. Your systems are attempting to force necessary maintenance." Jaiho turned his head to see the Iridian mechanic working on SAM. 4 of her 6 limbs moved with precise coordination, one holding a small welding tool, another adjusting SAM's sensor array, while the remaining 2 managed various diagnostic tools. Her compound eyes glowed a soft blue in concentration. "I don't normally pass out," Jaiho said, embarrassment heating his face. "I'm sorry about that." "Apology unnecessary," Kixia replied without looking up from her work. It was a predictable system response. Jaiho slowly swung his legs off the bench and sat up, more carefully this time. A small device on the wall near him beeped as he moved. "What's that?" he asked. "Biological monitor," Kixit explained, "currently tracking your vital functions." Jaiho frowned. "I didn't agree to that." "Emergency protocols. You were an unattended system in failure mode." Kixit set down her welding tool and picked up something that looked like a curved silver wand. "I have questions regarding your maintenance schedule. I don't have time for 20-hour shifts for 3 weeks." Kix's exoskeleton clicked as she worked on SETAM. "No wonder your organic systems are failing." Jaiho stared at her. "How did you know that?" "Your droid's internal log shows continuous operation with only brief charging periods for 22 days. As your assistant, it operates when you operate." She adjusted something inside SETAM's open panel. "Simple deduction." Jaiho ran a hand through his tangled hair. "The terraforming project on New Jeju is behind schedule. If we don't get atmospheric processors online within the next month, we'll miss the planting window. That means another full year before colonization can begin. And you are the only human capable of this work." Kixa asked, her antennae twitching. "No, but..." Jaiho hesitated. "I'm the project lead. There aren't many humans in terraforming leadership positions. I can't show weakness." "Fascinating logic error," Kixa said. She set down her tools and moved toward a small refrigeration unit in the corner of the workshop, equating biological necessity with weakness. Jaiho watched as she removed a container of pale blue liquid. "I'm fine," he insisted, swaying slightly as he stood up. "Just a human thing. We push through." "Indeed. Your species is known for overriding biological warning systems," Kixa agreed. She poured the blue liquid into what looked like a metal cup and brought it to Jaiho. "Drink this." Jaiho eyed the cup suspiciously. "What is it?" "Nutrient solution. Compatible with human biology. Contains proteins, electrolytes, glucose, and trace minerals." "I'm not hungry." "Hunger is a signal your system has learned to ignore," Kixa said. "The need remains." Jaiho reluctantly took the cup. The liquid smelled faintly of coconut and something unfamiliar but not unpleasant. He took a small sip. It tasted better than he expected, slightly sweet with a hint of saltiness. As he drank, Kixa returned to SETAM and pressed a sequence of buttons on the droid's control panel. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. On one side were SETAM's diagnostics, a schematic of the droid with several areas highlighted in yellow and one in red. On the other side was what looked like a human body outline with significantly more areas marked in red and orange. "What is this?" Jaiho asked, though he already knew the answer. Kixa projected Jaiho's biological readings beside SETAM's diagnostic report. "Comparative system analysis," she explained. "Your droid has a misaligned sensor array, worn treads, and minor power regulation issues." She moved one limb to indicate the human outline. "You have severe sleep deprivation, nutritional deficiencies, muscle tension that is restricting blood flow, and dangerously elevated stress hormones." Jaiho stared at the display, seeing his body through the alien's mechanical perspective. It was strange and unsettling to be analyzed like a machine, but he couldn't deny the evidence before him. "In my culture, to repair one component while ignoring system failure is deeply unethical," Kixa continued. "It violates the principle of system harmony." "I'm not a machine," Jaiho protested weakly. "No," Kixa agreed. "You are more complex, more valuable, more difficult to replace." Her compound eyes shifted to a gentle amber color. "And yet you treat yourself with less care than this simple soil analysis unit." Jaiho felt a strange emotion rise within him, something between defensiveness and a dawning realization. The alien wasn't wrong. If SAM had been operating under the conditions Jaiho had imposed on himself, he would have brought the droid in for repairs weeks ago. "I can complete repairs on your droid in approximately 2 hours," Kixa said. "However, I propose a deal. I fix your droid quickly if you submit to maintenance yourself." "Maintenance?" Jai-ho repeated. What exactly does that mean? Nothing invasive, Kiksa assured him. Nutrition, hydration, rest, and basic physical adjustments to improve circulation and reduce muscle tension. All compatible with human biology. Jai-ho looked at Sam, its sensor array hanging at an awkward angle. He needed the droid operational as soon as possible, but he also knew he was running on fumes. Another day or two, and he might collapse completely. How long would this maintenance take? He asked cautiously. 4 hours minimum, Kiksa replied, during which I will also complete repairs on SAM. 4 hours. Jai-ho shook his head. I can't lose that much time. Consider this, Kiksa said, her voice remarkably patient. Your current efficiency is approximately 30% of optimal. After maintenance, you would likely operate at 80% or better. Applied over the next week, this represents a net gain of productivity, not a loss. Jai-ho blinked. The alien was speaking his language now. Efficiency, productivity, numbers. He looked again at the biological readings displayed before him. The red areas seemed to pulse in rhythm with his racing heart. How do you know so much about humans? He asked. Iridians are students of all systems, Kiksa explained. Mechanical, biological, social. We see patterns where others see differences. She made a gesture with her smaller limbs that might have been the equivalent of a shrug. Also, I have repaired many droids belonging to humans. I observe. I learn. Jai-ho drained the last of the blue liquid in his cup. Already he felt slightly more alert, the edge of his headache dulling. If I agree to this, he said slowly, no one else can know. Especially not anyone from TerraCorps. Client confidentiality is standard, Kiksa assured him. In my workshop, you are simply another system requiring maintenance. Jai-ho looked at his faithful droid, then back at his own biological readings. Finally, he nodded. Okay, he said. I agree to your deal. Excellent, Kiksa said, her antennae quivering in what Jai-ho guessed might be satisfaction. System harmony will be restored. As the alien turned back to work on Sam, Jai-ho couldn't help but wonder what exactly he had just agreed to. But for the first time in weeks, a small part of him felt something like relief. Jai-ho sat on a workbench with a shallow bowl of strange food in his hands. The meal Kiksa had prepared looked like purple rice, mixed with protein cubes that shifted color from blue to green depending on the angle. Small orange bits that resembled vegetables were scattered throughout. It smelled surprisingly good, like roasted nuts and mild spices. What is this exactly? Jai-ho asked, poking at it with the utensil Kiksa had provided. It looked like a cross between a spoon and a small shovel. Nutrient complex adapted for human consumption. Kiksa replied while working on Sesam with 3 of her limbs. A 4th limb occasionally checked readings on a monitor connected to the small sensor patch she placed on Jai-ho's wrist. Contains all essential amino acids, complex carbohydrates, minerals, and micronutrients your system requires. Jai-ho took a small, cautious bite. The texture was unusual, slightly chewy with crunchy bits, but the taste was pleasant, like salted rice with a hint of sweetness. It's not bad, he admitted, taking another bite. Flavor is irrelevant, Kiksa said, her antenna twitching. Function is primary. Humans don't really work that way, Jai-ho explained between bites. We like things to taste good, even when we know they're good for us. Inefficient programming, Kiksa commented, but there was no judgment in her tone. She was simply stating a fact as she saw it. The repair shop hummed with activity. Various machines ran diagnostics and repair cycles on other items. Jai-ho watched as Kiksa deftly recalibrated Sam's sensor array. Her movements were precise and economical, no motion wasted. How long have you been a mechanic? Jai-ho asked. I have repaired systems for 73 of your Earth years, Kiksa replied. Jai-ho nearly choked on his food. 73 years. How old are you? 112 Earth years. relatively young for an Iridian. She adjusted something inside Sam's main panel, and a series of lights flickered on in sequence. My species typically functions for 250 to 300 years before system failure. That's amazing, Jaiho said. He was 29 and already running his body into the ground. Longevity is a result of proper maintenance, Kixis stated matter-of-factly. Your monitor shows improved readings. The nutrition is having positive effects. Jaiho hadn't realized how hungry he was until he started eating. Now the bowl was nearly empty, and he did feel better, more alert, less shaky. The persistent headache that had been his companion for weeks had faded to a dull pressure rather than sharp pain. After you finish eating, I will perform physical adjustments to release muscle tension, Kixit informed him. Then you will enter rest mode for minimum 2 hours. Sleep? I can't sleep here, Jaiho protested. I need to. Your SAM unit will require 2 hours for final calibrations and testing, Kixa interrupted. This time will be used efficiently for your maintenance as well. Jaiho sighed. He had agreed to the deal, after all. Fine. As he finished the last of his meal, Kixa approached with what looked like a handheld scanner. She ran it over his shoulders and back, studying the results on a small screen. Major tension nodes detected, she announced. Please remove outer protective layer. Jaiho stared at her. My what? Outer fabric, Kixa clarified, making a tugging motion at her own exoskeleton. Oh, my jacket. Jaiho slipped off his TerraQuartz utility jacket, revealing the thin black t-shirt underneath. Like this, sufficient, Kixa said. She set aside the scanner and approached Jaiho with 2 of her smaller limbs extended. This may cause momentary discomfort. Before Jaiho could ask what she meant, Kix's appendages pressed into specific points on his shoulders and back. The pressure was firm and precise, finding knots of tension Jaiho hadn't even realized were there. He gasped at the initial pain, then sighed as the muscles released. Your muscle fibers are severely contracted, Kixa observed, continuing the treatment. This restricts nutrient flow and creates system inefficiency. We call it being tense, Jaiho said, wincing as she found another painful spot. Stress does that to humans. Humans are remarkable, Kixa said, monitoring Jaiho's improving vitals on the nearby screen. Brilliant engineers who neglect your own biological systems. Her words stung with truth. Jaiho had spent years learning how to care for terraforming equipment, how to maintain droids like SAM, how to keep atmospheric processors running at peak efficiency. But he treated his own body like an afterthought. There aren't many humans in terraforming leadership, Jaiho confessed as Kixa worked. The physical relief of his muscles unbinding loosened his tongue as well. I can't show weakness. The corporate directors already think humans are too fragile for long-term off-Earth assignments. If I can't keep up, they'll replace me with a Saurian or a Velox. Kix's movements paused briefly. You consider maintenance to be weakness. In human corporate culture, yes, Jaiho admitted. Taking time for yourself is seen as lacking dedication. Fascinating error in logic, Kixa commented. Her appendages resumed their work, finding pressure points along Jaiho's spine. Would you operate SAM continuously until failure? Of course not, Jaiho said. That would damage its systems. Yet you operate yourself this way. It wasn't a question, but an observation. Jaiho had no good answer. When framed like that, his behavior did seem illogical, perhaps even foolish. All systems require maintenance, Kixa replied, her voice softening in a way Jaiho hadn't heard before. Mechanical or organic, this is not weakness, it is wisdom. The alien's hands, if they could be called hands, moved to Jaiho's neck and the base of his skull. The tension there had been building for months, maybe years. As Kixa applied precise pressure, Jaiho felt a release so profound that tears sprang to his eyes. That feels amazing, he murmured. System response indicates effective treatment, Kixa noted, sounding pleased. Your biological readings are improving. Jai-Ho glanced at the monitor. The red areas on his body scan had shifted to orange and yellow. He did feel better, not just physically, but mentally. The fog of exhaustion had lifted somewhat, allowing clearer thoughts. "How did you learn to do this for humans?" he asked. "Iridians study all systems," Kixet explained. "Your species has visited my repair shop 67 times in the past decade. I observe. I adapt. I improve my techniques." Jai-Ho realized she had been studying humans all this time, just as she would study any machine that came into her shop. The thought was both strange and comforting. "Now," Kixet said, stepping back, "rest phase must begin. Follow me." She led Jai-Ho to a small side room he hadn't noticed before. Inside was a simple cot with clean linens and a soft-looking pillow. The lights were dimmer here, and a gentle hum created peaceful white noise. "This is where you sleep?" Jai-Ho asked. "Iridians do not sleep as humans do," Kixet explained. "This space is for systems requiring extended downtime." She gestured to the cot. 2 hours minimum. Your SAM unit will be ready when you emerge from rest cycle." Jai-Ho wanted to protest again, but found he didn't have the energy. The release of tension in his muscles had left him feeling almost dizzy with relief. The cot looked more inviting than anything he'd seen in weeks. 2 hours, he agreed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Then I really need to get back to work." "Agreed," Kixet said. "Rest cycle will improve work efficiency by estimated 43%. As Kixet turned to leave, Jai-Ho called after her, "Thank you for helping its SAM, and me, I guess." Kix's antennae twitched in what Jai-Ho was beginning to recognize as an expression of satisfaction or perhaps pleasure. "All systems deserve proper care," she said simply. Then she dimmed the lights further and closed the door. Jai-Ho meant to just lie down for a moment, to rest his eyes before getting up to check on Sam's progress. But the moment his head touched the pillow, exhaustion claimed him. He fell into the deepest sleep he'd had in months, his body finally getting the maintenance it desperately needed. Outside in the workshop, Kixet continued working on SAM, while occasionally checking the readings from Jai-Ho's monitor. As the human's vital signs stabilized into healthy sleep patterns, her compound eyes glowed a contented blue. "Humans," she clicked to herself in her native language. "Such complex systems, so brilliant, so stubborn, and so very worth repairing." Jai-Ho woke to the sound of steady beeping. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. The small room was dimly lit, with pipes running along the ceiling and walls covered in what looked like thermal insulation. Then he remembered. Kix's repair shop, the alien mechanic who had insisted on maintaining him alongside his droid. He checked his wrist communicator. 4 hours had passed, not the 2 he had agreed to. He sat up quickly, panic rising in his chest. "Sam, the project," he muttered, swinging his legs off the cot. The door slid open, and Kix's tall form appeared in the doorway. Her compound eyes glowed a calm blue in the dim light. "Your rest cycle has completed," she observed. "Biological readings show significant improvement." "You were supposed to wake me after 2 hours," Jai-Ho said, standing up. To his surprise, his body didn't protest with the usual aches and stiffness. He felt rested, clear-headed. "Your system required additional maintenance time," Kixet explained simply. "I made an executive decision based on diagnostic readings. But my work, your SAM unit is fully repaired and upgraded." Kixet interrupted, stepping aside so Jai-Ho could see into the main workshop. Sam stood near the center of the room, its sensor array properly aligned, its treads replaced with what looked like newer, more durable versions. The droid's exterior had been cleaned and polished, and its indicator lights glowed a healthy green. "You upgraded it?" Jai-Ho asked, walking over to inspect the droid. "Minor efficiency improvements," Kixet confirmed. "I replaced worn components with superior versions I had in stock." Jaiho circled Asatam, examining the changes. The droid tracked his movement smoothly, its sensors rotating with none of the jerky motions that had plagued it before. "This is incredible work," Jaiho admitted. "But I need to get back to the terraforming site immediately. We're behind schedule, and Director Kwan is probably—" A sharp buzz from his communicator cut him off. Jaiho looked down at his wrist and felt his stomach drop. 3 missed calls from Director Kwan, each marked urgent. "Oh no," he groaned, pressing the return call button. The air above his communicator flickered, and a holographic image formed. A stern-faced woman in her 50s with short gray hair and the insignia of TerraCorp senior management on her collar. "Engineer Park." Director Kwan's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Where have you been? Your absence from the site has been noted. Atmospheric processing has fallen behind schedule. Explain yourself immediately." Jaiho swallowed hard. "Director Kwan, I apologize for the delay. My SESAM unit required urgent repairs, and I brought it to a specialist on the station. I'm preparing to return now." "Unacceptable." Kwan cut him off. "You should have requested a replacement unit from TerraCorp's resources. This project is time-sensitive. The board is watching our progress closely." Jaiho opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, Kixa moved into the projection field beside him. Her tall form and distinctive exoskeleton immediately caught the director's attention. "What is this?" Kwan demanded, eyes narrowing at the sight of the Iridian. "Greetings, Director," Kixa said, her voice calm and authoritative. "I am Kixa, Systems Efficiency Specialist. I have been analyzing both Engineer Park's droid and the human component of your terraforming operation." "The human component," Kwan repeated, her holographic eyebrows rising. "Engineer Park is not equipment to be analyzed, alien. All connected systems must be evaluated for peak efficiency," Kixa continued, unperturbed by the director's tone. "Your human component has been operating at dangerous parameters." Jaiho felt his face flush with embarrassment. This was exactly the kind of confrontation he had hoped to avoid. Being labeled as weak or inefficient could end his career prospects with TerraCorps. "Director Kwan," he started, trying to regain control of the conversation. "What Kixa means is—" "I know precisely what I mean," Kixa interrupted. She tapped a sequence on a nearby console, and several charts appeared in the holographic field alongside Kwan's image. "These are Engineer Park's biological readings from 12 hours ago compared to now." The charts showed dramatic differences, red sections turning yellow and green, wavy lines becoming more regular, numerical values shifting from critical to normal ranges. "Your human asset was functioning at 31% efficiency due to improper maintenance protocols," Kixa explained, her antennae moving in precise patterns as she spoke. "After minimal intervention, efficiency has risen to 78%. Director Kwan's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "What does this have to do with our project timeline?" "Everything," Kixa replied. She displayed another chart showing a projection over several weeks. "If Engineer Park continues with previous operational parameters, what humans call overwork, efficiency will drop to critical levels within 5 days, resulting in complete system failure." "System failure?" Kwan asked. "What humans call collapse or breakdown," Kixa clarified. "Physical and mental incapacitation requiring medical intervention." Jaiho stared at the projection in horror. Was that really where he had been headed? The data seemed clear, presented in the universal language of charts and numbers that both humans and aliens understood. However, Kixa continued, implementing proper maintenance cycles will result in sustained efficiency above 75%, enabling project completion within required parameters. She highlighted a section of the chart. "With rest cycles and proper nutrient intake, Engineer Park will complete more work in less time." Director Kwan's holographic image flickered as she leaned forward, studying the charts. "And you are qualified to make these assessments how exactly?" Iridian analysis is highly regarded throughout the sector, Kixis stated matter-of-factly. My certifications in system optimization are recognized by the Interstellar Commerce Guild and 6 major corporate entities, including Vrlnak Industries. Jai-Ho recognized the name. Vrlnak was one of TerraCorp's biggest competitors. If they trusted Iridian analysis, it would be difficult for Quan to dismiss it outright. In addition, Kixa continued, Engineer Park's droid has been optimized beyond standard specifications. It will now function at 115% of previous capacity. Sam chose that moment to move forward, its movements smoother and faster than before. The droid extended its soil sampling probe and retracted it in a quick, fluid motion that would have been impossible before Kix's repairs. Director Quan's eyes narrowed as she watched the demonstration. Ji-Ho held his breath, waiting for her response. After a long moment, Quan spoke. Engineer Park, you are fortunate that your consultant has provided such detailed analysis. Her tone remained cold, but some of the edge had gone out of it. However, the project timeline remains critical. Director Quan, Kixa interjected, her compound eyes shifting to a more intense purple. I would be remiss in my professional duties if I did not point out that ignoring this analysis could constitute a violation of interstellar labor standards regarding sentient resource management. The implied threat hung in the air. Labor violations could result in sanctions and fines that would cost far more than a slightly delayed project. Are you threatening me, alien? Quan asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I am stating facts, Kixa replied calmly, as is my duty as a systems specialist. Jai-Ho watched the standoff with growing anxiety. His career seemed to be hanging in the balance. Finally, Director Quan let out a short, sharp sigh. Engineer Park, you are granted a 72-hour extension on atmospheric processing targets. I expect to see the improved efficiency this specialist has promised. Relief flooded through Jai-Ho. Thank you, Director. I won't let you down. See that you don't, Quan said. Her gaze shifted to Kixa. And you, alien. Your analysis had better be correct. Iridian analysis is always correct, Kixa replied simply. It is a matter of pride. Director Quan's hologram flickered once more before disappearing, leaving Jai-Ho and Kixa standing in the suddenly quiet workshop. I can't believe you did that, Jai-Ho said after a moment, his voice a mix of awe and lingering anxiety. No one stands up to Director Quan like that. I simply presented system facts, Kixa replied, her antennae relaxing from their rigid position during the confrontation. Your supervisor recognized the logic, despite emotional resistance. Jai-Ho shook his head in disbelief. You gave me 3 more days. With SAM working better than before, I might actually catch up to the original schedule. If, Kixa emphasized, raising one of her smaller limbs, you maintain your biological systems according to the protocol I will provide. The what? Kixa moved to her console and tapped a series of commands. A small data chip emerged from a slot. Human maintenance protocol, she explained, handing him the chip. Rest cycles, nutrition requirements, physical movement patterns to maintain optimal efficiency. Compatible with your communicator. Jai-Ho took the chip, turning it over in his fingers. You created a maintenance manual. For me. All complex systems require maintenance guides, Kixa stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Humans are no exception. Looking at the small chip in his hand, Jai-Ho felt something shift in his understanding. Perhaps his body wasn't so different from the machines he maintained. Perhaps caring for himself wasn't weakness, but simply good engineering. Thank you, he said, sliding the chip into his communicator. For everything. Kix's compound eyes shifted to a warm amber color. System harmony benefits all, she said simply. 2 weeks had passed since Jai-Ho's unexpected maintenance session at Kix's repairs. The atmospheric processors on New Jeju were now running ahead of schedule. The first stage of terraforming was nearly complete, and the project would meet its deadline with days to spare. Jai-Ho walked through the bustling corridors of Proxima Centauri Station with a steady, confident stride. People who knew him did double-takes as he passed. Gone was the haggard, exhausted engineer who had been running on stintabs and determination. His TerraQuartz uniform now fit properly on his frame. His eyes were clear and alert. His skin had regained its healthy color. Beside him, Sam rolled smoothly, its treads making a soft, whirring sound on the station floor. The droid's sensor array rotated with precision, gathering data even during the simple journey through the station. Its efficiency had improved dramatically after Kix's repairs and upgrades. Jai-Ho checked his wrist communicator, glancing at the small app that now ran constantly in the background. The human maintenance protocol that Kixa had programmed for him displayed his current status. All systems optimal. It reminded him that he had 30 minutes before his next meal was due and that he needed to complete his midday stretching routine. Jai-Ho smiled to himself. 2 weeks ago, he would have laughed at the idea of a maintenance schedule for his body. Now he couldn't imagine working without one. He turned down a familiar corridor toward the outer ring of the station. The signs became less polished, the lighting dimmer. The smells changed from the sanitized air of the central hub to the more complex aromas of machinery and alien spices. When Jai-Ho reached Kix's repairs, he paused before entering. Through the transparent door panel, he could see that the shop was busier than before. 3 different aliens stood at various workbenches, and there seemed to be new equipment installed along the walls. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Jai-Ho saw Kixa working at her main console. She was speaking with a tall, tentacled Vrelnak engineer who was gesturing at what appeared to be a malfunctioning drone. Implement rest cycle for minimum 6 hours, Kixa was saying, her antennae moving in precise patterns. Return tomorrow for drone collection. The Vrelnak made a gurgling sound that the universal translator rendered as, "But the drone is needed for survey work immediately. Biological systems require maintenance before further work cycles," Kixa replied firmly. "Drone will be ready when maintenance is complete." The Vrelnak seemed about to protest further when it noticed Jai-Ho standing near the entrance. After a moment of apparent consideration, the alien gave a gesture of agreement. "Very well. 6 hours rest cycle," it conceded. Then, turning to Jai-Ho, it added, "TerraQuartz engineer, yes. Your atmospheric project proceeded after implementation of Iridian Protocol." "Yes," Jai-Ho confirmed, surprised to be recognized. "We're ahead of schedule now." The Vrelnak made a sound like bubbling liquid, apparently a form of acknowledgement, before departing the shop. Kixa turned her compound eyes toward Jai-Ho. They glowed a warm amber color that he had come to recognize as pleasure or satisfaction. "Engineer Park," she greeted him. "Your timing is optimal. I have just completed my scheduled tasks." "Hello, Kixa," Jai-Ho said, approaching the workbench. Sam rolled beside him, beeping a greeting of its own. "I wanted to thank you personally for your help." Sam is functioning perfectly. He straightened his shoulders, standing tall and relaxed. "And so am I." Kix's exoskeleton made a soft clicking sound as she moved around the workbench to examine both Jai-Ho and Sam with a handheld scanner. "Biological readings confirm verbal report," she said, sounding pleased. "Your efficiency has stabilized at 89% of optimal. Significant improvement from 31% at first contact. The maintenance protocol you gave me has been life-changing," Jai-Ho admitted. "I've never worked so well while feeling so good. I'm sleeping every night, eating regularly, taking breaks." He laughed softly. "Things humans are supposed to do anyway, yet often neglect," Kixa observed. She gestured around the workshop. "Your experience has proven valuable for my operations as well." Jai-Ho noticed now that the shop had indeed expanded. New diagnostic equipment lined the walls. A separate area had been set up with what looked like comfortable seating for various alien physiologies. A series of monitors displayed biological readings similar to those Kixa had shown him during his own maintenance. "What is all this?" he asked. "I have expanded services," Kiksa explained, her antennae twitching with what seemed like pride. Kiksa's Repairs now offers complete system maintenance, mechanical and biological. She led Jaiho to a newly installed console displaying various charts and statistics. "I've started a biological maintenance program for humans on station," she continued. "It has become quite popular among alien employers who utilize human workers." Jaiho looked closer at the data. The console showed efficiency measurements for various crews working throughout the Proxima Centauri system. Each graph showed similar patterns: initial drops in efficiency followed by steady improvements after implementation of what was labeled Human Maintenance Protocol. "You're using my protocol for other humans?" Jaiho asked, surprised. "Modified for individual biological variations, yes," Kiksa confirmed. "Your corporate supervisor, Director Quan, referred 3 additional project teams after observing your improved performance." Jaiho's eyes widened. "Quan sent people to you? The same Quan who called you alien and practically threatened to report you to authorities?" "The same," Kiksa replied, her compound eyes shifting to a slightly bluer shade that Jaiho interpreted as amusement. "Corporate efficiency overrode initial emotional resistance. Logical outcome." Jaiho shook his head in amazement. "So now you're fixing humans as well as their machines?" "Correct. The approach is proving highly effective. Several corporations now mandate maintenance cycles for human workers on long-term projects." Kiksa's antennae twitched. Some initially resisted, calling it coddling or excessive care. Their position changed when presented with efficiency data. Jaiho laughed, the sound echoing in the workshop. "Aliens teaching humans to be human. There's something beautiful about that." Sam beeped and rotated its sensor array toward Jaiho, as if agreeing with the sentiment. "Not teaching to be human," Kiksa corrected gently. "Teaching to maintain human systems properly, as you would maintain this droid." Jaiho nodded, acknowledging the distinction. He watched as Kiksa moved around her expanded workshop, noting how even her movements seemed to follow an efficient pattern. No motion wasted, no energy spent without purpose. "Your business seems to be growing," he observed.